James May's shocking reaction to reuniting with Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond. After a long time apart, James May, Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond, the legendary trio of Top Gear, finally reunited at a special event. In a tense yet suspenseful atmosphere, everyone couldn't help but be curious about James May's reaction when they met two old friends again. But no one expected that James' reaction would shock the entire hall. The biggest car festival of the year was held at a magnificent exhibition centre in London, and the three close friends of the Grand Tour agreed to participate to bring an exciting reunion. Fans were all looking forward to witnessing breathtaking confrontations, hearty jokes, and especially humorous arguments between the three. However, James May surprised everyone from the moment he appeared. While Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond walked in with confident steps and bright smiles, James May had a completely different appearance. He was wearing a striped shirt, not very excited, and still seemed to be in disbelief that he was sitting next to his two troublesome friends. James' signature long hair had also been cut much shorter, creating a very new look compared to his usual appearance on television. As the three of them sat down at the table, the lights were shining brightly, creating a glamorous atmosphere around them. All eyes were on these three famous people, expecting them to continue their eccentricities and fiery arguments. But the unexpected happened when Jeremy and Richard started talking. "Wow, it's been a long time, James. Have you missed us?" Jeremy asked with his signature smile, a smile that most people were all too familiar with. James looked at him for a moment, then said something that shocked the entire hall. "Actually, I don't miss you guys that much." Jeremy and Richard both looked at each other, unsure of how to react. They expected James to laugh or make a joke like he usually did, but he just sat there, staring at them without a smile. "What do you mean?" Richard asked, a little worried. "I've been living a pretty peaceful life all this time," James said, his eyes never leaving them. "No crazy adventures, no crazy car races, and none of your stupid pranks. Everything's been pretty stable. And I think I like it." The whole room fell silent, and whispers began to rise. Everyone expected James to return to his joking ways, but instead, he was showing a more serious attitude than he had ever seen. It seemed that the distance had made James realize that not everything had to be as loud and dramatic as before. Jeremy was the first to break the silence. He gave a bitter smile and said, "Oh, so we've tired you out with our pranks?" James didn't respond immediately, but looked down at the floor. Another moment of silence passed, before he slowly raised his head and said, "It's not that I am tired. It's just, I don't want to live in a noisy world anymore. I want to have time to enjoy simple things, like a hot cup of tea and a good book." Richard looked at James, then at Jeremy, and both of them couldn't help but laugh. Even though James said that, they knew that under that tough exterior, James was still the precious friend they had always loved. "So you don't want to continue our crazy trips?" Richard asked in surprise. "Not that I don't like it," James replied, "but I think I can live without having to jump into a race car and drive across the desert or crash into a rock wall just to see who wins." Jeremy and Richard looked at each other, both understanding that James wasn't really giving up on adventure. He was just showing them a different side of himself, a more mature and thoughtful James May. Still, their conversations continued, and everyone realized that while James might not be as enthusiastic as before, this reunion still brought joy and connection that only the trio could bring. Eventually, they laughed together, and everyone understood that no matter how much had changed, their friendship would remain strong, like race cars that never stopped.